today. So first I'd like to ask Ross to do an acknowledgement of country.
Hi everyone, great to see so many faces with an interest in the Western Port Learning Guarantee, and thanks for coming. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, locally where we are in Hastings, the Boonwurrung and Boonwurrung people, and pay my respects to elders past and present. Thank them for this beautiful place that we live in, being the protectors of the land, water and skies here on the Mornington Peninsula.
Thanks so much, Ross. Thank you very much. That's Ross Wettenhall, who's our wonderful lead teacher in the Learning Enhancement program, who we'll hear from much more today. We've also got wonderful Emma Slater, principal from Tyabb Primary School, and Trudy sitting there with Emma. Hi, Trudy. And our other special guests are Georgia Hourn and Laura Baxter from the Western Port Community Support Centre. I'd like to really thank everyone so much for coming. It's really great to see all these wonderful faces here. As you know, we have always, our visits to community partners have been an integral part of the MPF since we started back in 2017, which seems a while ago now. And with COVID, we just put them on hold for a while. Given there's no change in sight, we've flipped to the online format, and really appreciate you all joining us in this way. In fact, we can have more people, I guess, this way than we did in person, and it's kind of intimate in its own funny sort of way. So most of you, I think, have had a little background paper that we sent out about the MPF and the Learning Guarantee and the Learning Enhancement project. Really, the MPF is here as a conduit within the community, raising awareness of issues of long-term disadvantage, but great opportunities that we have around us to change. And those opportunities come when we all know a bit more about what's going on and how we can all be involved. I'd really like to thank our incredible donors who make it all possible for the MPF to do this work. Without our donors, we wouldn't be doing any of it, and it's a great bringing together of forces that we have with our donors and our community partners. So a huge thanks to everyone for the roles that you play with us. The disadvantage that we are concerned about is very localised, and it's very close to areas that are not disadvantaged. That conundrum is really incredible, and it's being highlighted, I think, a lot with the work of the Paul Ramsay Foundation at the moment that is focusing on this sort of residualisation. And schools really suffer and have great challenges to overcome. What we're incredibly inspired by is what the schools that we're working with are doing, and really it's like a blossoming of work in the grassroots of this community. And I think we're all really keen to hear what it's all about. The Learning Guarantee is what we call the overall initiative, which brings together No Limits, the early years program from kinder through to year 2, then the Learning Enhancement program, which focuses on year 3 to year 6, and then Elevate, which we'll talk about next week on our Zoom meeting, and that's for the secondary students. But today we're in the middle, looking at the upper primary work, and I'll ask Emma to give us some background on how it all started and how it's working. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Steph. It was really bizarre. Just not very long ago, somebody did ask, where did this idea come from? How did it all start? And I had to sort of think for a moment, because it actually started with a cup of coffee and a conversation with Michael Devine and Christopher Quinn. And Michael Devine was the then principal at Western Port Secondary College. And the conversation was more around children transitioning from the local primary schools to Western Port Secondary with very low academic results and lots of different issues along with it. I did defend the primary sector, I might add, and said, well, they didn't come in that real high either. So, we'll cop some of it, but there's a plethora of reasons behind it. So we started having conversations, and really Michael said, well, our vision moving forward is to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty. especially in the Western Port area. And Michael was lucky enough to obtain a fellowship, and I feel ever so grateful that Chris and myself and Michael were able to go over and have a look at the Harlem Children's Zone in New York. And we were there, we met other leaders over there to see how they've become successful in changing, in helping break the cycle of poverty. We knew it was going to be bold and ambitious, this plan. That's the big vision, that's the big goal, but how are we actually going to do it? And we knew we were going to come across many challenges. We knew we were going to come across blockers, but we also knew there was probably people like yourselves that would continue to inspire us. And there's no way this project, this vision, would be anywhere near as far as long as we what we actually are, without any of you who are sitting in front of me today. One of the reasons we know to break that generational poverty is that we have to focus on the social and the educational needs and development of their children. And when we were at the Harlem Children's Zone, I actually stuck out to get a drink, and I had a conversation. The leaders were fantastic and inspirational, and they gave us lots of data sets, but I was more interested in some of the stories from the students. So when I was out there, I was in line with a student who was about 12, 13, and I asked them what they liked best about the school, and we're having a conversation, and they said to me, and I wrote it down, the teachers get me. And I thought that was interesting. The teachers know me. And I thought, okay. And I was thinking, well, we know our kids back at Tyabb Rail. But I thought that was an interesting takeaway for me. And I'll come full circle with my story. So just keep that one in the back of your head. The teachers know me. Where am I up to? So with that, we got back and I realised that it's all about connections and relationships. Connections and relationships is going to be paramount to our success, and I really needed to have staff that believed in that as well. We had to have connections with the high school. We'd have to have connections beyond the fence. It wasn't just what we were doing in the classrooms, it went beyond that. And so with that, we had wraparound, so we started with wraparound programs to improve children's family and neighbourhood environments, and that was absolutely necessary. We know that to connect with the students, we have to have really good relationships with them. And are we going to like every child that walks through that door? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The tough kids are the ones that are never going to be absent. They're not going to be away. But we also know why they're here, and they need to feel connected. And we know why kids disengage. It's because of poverty. It's because of low attendance. It might be because of negative influences from their peers. But disengaged children don't learn, and they don't learn from people that they don't like. So we really need to make sure that you have to fake it. Don't get me wrong, teachers are the best chameleons of all time, best actors and actresses. You have to make every single child that walks through your door feel important and feel connected to either you or somebody else or something. You've got to have the hook that get them into the classroom. And if you can hook in to not only their child, but hook into their family, then, and like what I was saying to Trudy, with that wraparound program, I have eyes on them, the classroom teacher has eyes on them, Trudy has eyes on them, and it is truly a wraparound program. And that's what's going to make a significant difference.
Emma, perhaps we could just ask if you could give us some insights into the children and to the families that are in your area, because we might not all really be that aware of the special or specific needs that some of the kids come with.
Sure. Some of the statistics would be appalling. Like we have both parents that are incarcerated. We don't have any out-of-home care children now, but we have a significant amount in kinship care. Kinship care is when they're in the care of either an older sibling or a grandparent. We have a Koori we have about 10% that identify as Koori, which is fantastic. But it's also those that we know are Koori, but yet are not identifying as for whatever their reasons might be. We have a significant amount of students that have trauma-based backgrounds. We have about 4% of parents that are alcoholics or that we know of currently. We have a significant number that have had past dealings with some pharmaceuticals that are probably not legal. We've had children who have had their doors knocked down at 5 o'clock in the morning. Their parents have been on the front page of the local paper because their parents have been dealing in drugs. One family had the father will be out when the child is graduating in grade 6, we think, because they found submachine guns underneath the bed. So we knew he was going to get 6 to 7. This family is thrilled that COVID is happening because every time the prisoners are in lockdown, they get a significant amount of time reduced from their sentence. I'm not going to comment on that, but it is amazing different lenses that that people see the world through, and that was a big eye opener for me. I came. I've been a student myself. I'm a parent. I've been a teacher. I've been a leader, and now I'm a principal. So I've seen the education through lots of different lenses. And when I got to Tyabb Railway Station Primary School, I was a classroom teacher for many years, and then I stepped up as principal. And I never realised that my principal role would involve me with such massive wellbeing issues. And lots of mental health issues, not only from the student, but primarily from the parent. And it's been amazing the difference that this wraparound program has allowed us to connect our parents with support.
That's such a critical part of the story, I think, Emma, isn't it? It's we're talking not, schools are fundamentally about educating young people, children and young people, but that education can't happen when there are lots of barriers that are nothing to do with the child. And what these schools in the program are doing are recognising that they've got to go beyond that basic remit and exploring how one does that in a system that's not really set up for it is a large part of what this work is. And to a large degree, it's exploratory. We're having a go. And that's the essential element of philanthropy and what the role that we can play as that philanthropic partner. And that is to say, what are your ideas for change? How can we support you with the risk capital? We are the have a go money for this. But what comes with that is a huge amount of accountability because we want to see what happens. So that's where the data collection and the reporting comes in really strongly. I wonder if we might just jump to Georgia and Laura, because you've talked very much about the need for that family engagement. And I know what has, it's been a critical part of the program to incorporate the work of the local Community Support and Information Centre. And at this point, please, I should say this is a conversation. So we're really happy for people to jump in with questions at any time. Just put up the hand or put it in the chat and I'll try and moderate as best as I can. But Laura and Georgia, perhaps you could tell us about your work at the community centre. And I know that you've got some, wonderful stories of people that you've really supported back into engagement with services, and often they've been highly disengaged.
Thank you, Steph. I think definitely our connections into the program and with Emma and Ross and the Crib Point Primary as well has been such an integral part of the family support program that we offer. And just following on from what Emma said about connections, those connections with the children, equally as important, as she mentioned, are the connections with the parents. And so Laura's got the capacity to go, you know, beyond the school setting and work with those parents, either in the home or in our agency or wherever that may be, and really infiltrate into what's going on behind the scenes, you know, after 3 p.m. when kids leave home, leave school rather, and head home. So those connections we've really focused on, and Laura will talk a bit more about that, but creating those relationships with people has been the main success of the program. So we're not sort of confined to work within any specific framework. We can work with what works best for the client. So it's client-led support and really creating a relationship with the families in order to create that trust and that connection that we can then, you know, link them into the supports that they need to, with no end closure date, no sort of, well, we can only see you here, we can't see you there, we can see you 5 times and then we're out. We're never out, we're always there, we always reopen, we never really close. I know there's many clients that come back to us even years later or months later, whatever it may be, because they don't know where else to go. Often the mainstream services do close, and then getting that reconnection is not easy. So as we sort of present as an open door and can do whatever it is that client needs, and it might be that Laura's going into the home and just working with the parents on how to set up a timetable of planning of how to, you know, get the lunch boxes made and get kids dressed into school, or something more intense and complex with drug and alcohol issues. We work very closely with child protection, and Laura's created a lot of really good, solid connections with the workers at child protection in Frankston and Cheltenham. And I know that just from the feedback from child protection, in particular, one worker said to us the other day, in 9 years, I've never had anyone work as closely and as connected and as committed as Laura has with the client. So the feedback is that method of working with people is absolutely working out with great success. And so I'll let Laura talk a little bit more about what she does, and maybe you've got some stories.
Yeah, sure. So hi everybody. So I'd go back to what Emma said about connections and relationships. I think that's where it all stems from, is actually when you first meet the client or the mum or dad or child, it's actually building on that relationship and connecting, finding whatever it is to help your relationship in the future with them. So I'll spend quite a lot of time building the connection and building the relationship so that they feel safe, because that's a big deal. A lot of these people have not actually felt safe with agencies, with child protection particularly. They feel threatened, they're fearful. So I think building really strong relationship with them and helping them feel safe and secure and able to open up is a lot of where we begin. And that can take a different amount of time with different families. So, you know, some people will come in and be really happy to engage straight up and help me, I need this and this. Others, you just need to be able to spend some more time building that relationship so that they feel that they can ask you anything. And that's where we want to be, is they need to be able to ask us anything to do with the children, to do with their relationship, to do with their drug and alcohol use, to do with their finances. And those are the spectrums that we cover, all those topics that are really hard for people to talk about. And I think that once we've got them to a place where they're happy to talk, then we start diverting into other agencies and being the connector again for the mum that needs help budgeting, or the dad that really has an anger management issue and needs to go on a course. And so you've got the connection at the beginning and you've got the connection in the middle, and you know, the connection never stops actually, because that's what it's all about. We can't carry all of their stuff, but we can collaborate with other services and help connect them in and network into other services that will, you know, take them on. And I think that sharing the load with school means that that wraparound care, again, that you were talking about, is so important. So Trudy, who's sitting behind Emma, Trudy and I will talk a lot about the families and about how we can best support them. So with the upper primary families that we're working with, Trudy will be working with the kids, but she'll give me a call and say, hey, there's a mum who's really isolated. Can you connect in with her? And so I'll make that call pretty much straight away. There's no waiting. And I think that's another thing that we're able to do, is to get onto the job quickly. Quite often with some agencies, they're snowed under and they don't have the ability that we do, especially during COVID, to go out to the home. But we can get onto the family quickly. And that's often the answer. So that we want to bring those isolated people back in, and we want to start helping them feel connected again and supported, and that they're not on their own, and that I'm caring for the mum or the dad, Emma's caring for the children. They know we're talking to each other. They're happy for us to talk to each other, and they're safe. And I think that's a really big thing, is that we're like a big family in terms of giving that support to our clients. And I think that that's probably been a real growth area, wouldn't you say, in the last year or so, is that we've been able to really, really look after families as a family.
But just on that point, Laura, I think it's important to recognise the really big differences that you're going about this work, and that again is part of what philanthropy can do. It can respond to a need which is unmet with a new way of doing something. You're really challenging the system in the mainstream, which is much more programmatic and predetermined, whereas your work is responsive to the client. It's really important to recognise what the differences are. We find with MPF, most of what we fund is literally people to do things differently. With most of the funding that we have would actually go to people and the work that they're doing. But we want to take that a little bit further and try to actually analyse it so we can be of some help. I mean, we've got an incredible opportunity with the state government now interested in what MPF is doing or enabling in the community. And we really need to be able to translate what we hear from Laura, from Georgia, from Emma, from Ross and Trudy into something that can be acted upon. So we look at the client journey through the services and see where the differences are between what this work is doing and what might happen in the mainstream, so that we can compare and contrast and actually have something useful out of it. But I think we can't overestimate the importance of the connection between the school and the local community support service, and the fact that Laura and Georgia sit in a service which is providing immediate relief to people is also another great benefit, because people go there for immediate needs but can then be softly introduced to some more substantial support.
Yeah.
So from the learning side, perhaps Ross, you could talk to us about the nitty-gritty of literacy and numeracy.
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Ross Wettenhall. I'm the Learning Enhancement Program Coordinator. I thought I'd give you a bit of a background a little bit as to where it's come from in the past few years as well, just so you can understand, I guess, how it has evolved and continues to evolve every day. Steph, like you said, it's exploratory, the work that we're doing, because we're constantly changing, and I'm really excited about some of the changes that we make nearly daily or weekly as we go along. It started off a few years ago with a teacher going out to visit the feeder primary schools, being Crib Point Primary and Tyabb Railway Station Primary School, and she would have 1 hour a week at each school. Obviously, the impact that person would have would be, I guess, measurable against the time they spent at the schools, but it's really good that the students, and I've spoken with a number of them, said, oh, I remember Miss Taylor, she used to come and visit, or Mr. Chambers, they used to come and visit. So really important for what our aim was, and the aim of the program really is to have students ready at key transition points in school, so that when they reach year 10, they're ready to tackle VCE, or they might seek an alternative pathway, whether that be VCAL or go and get a piece of paper to do an apprenticeship or something like that. So it's really a holistic approach to supporting kids from it's almost kindergarten with the No Limits program all the way up to year 10 and beyond. And as Emma spoke a little bit about the history of the program, there is quite severe disadvantage in the Western Port area. We had a statistic that 70% of kids attending Western Port Secondary College were behind the national minimum standards. So that means that 70% of students here were not at the expected level for reading, for numeracy, or in terms of wellbeing, that it wasn't there. So we questioned that, and last year that was true. 70% of students weren't at the expected level for reading or numeracy. Whether they just be a little bit behind, they should be at level 6 coming out of grade 6. Whether they were at halfway through grade 5, they were behind. So the work is really important. And speaking on the ground floor in my role, I'm now, well, I'll jump forward to the next year. Sorry, 2020. I was the sole person, I suppose, working in the learning guarantee, and I was based 2 days at each primary school and 1 day at Western Port Secondary College, and really a huge increase, and I know investment as well from the donor, so thank you. Going from an hour a week to a full-time role was, I think, a really big step in the right direction for the program, and gave me a time to really dive in and help and support some of these students with both academia and their wellbeing. So I was doing both, which was a huge role. And we I guess in 2020, we realised, obviously working remotely as well, really challenging year, the clear link between wellbeing and academics, and obviously families as well, that students or kids inherit these problems that they have no say in, whether it be not being able to read, not being read books at home, excuse me, family dysfunction issues. I have some statistics here. Last year in the Year 6 cohort, 55% of students that I worked with, we had referrals to Western Port Community Support. So over half of the students that I worked with were referred out. 33% at Crib Point were made with the same referral. So huge support from the communities. And just on Western Port Community Support, when I started my journey, I've been a primary school teacher for 7 or 8 years in the local area. I was navigating this huge web of wellbeing services that was really tricky, and trying to pull in the wellbeing team here to find out what was available. And we kind of had this almost aha moment when Steph organised a meeting with us and Western Port Community Support. We said, why don't we work together? So since then, Laura Baxter now works on site across the 3 schools, like Trudy Conlon and myself do as well. So we've really got this cluster approach to supporting students in the network. So in 2020, I was doing the intervention, which was sounds right literacy, and we were doing some numeracy intervention as well, and really trying to think outside the box with some of the wellbeing supports for students. And I'll talk to that a little bit more. So jump forward to 2021. I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Hopefully you can see that. Sorry. Can you see that there, Steph? Has that come up, or am I sharing my face?
Yeah, no, that was good. Yeah. It's pretty small, that's all.
Oh, Ross. Sorry, I'm not able to.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yep. That's
so
great.
This is sort of where it's evolved to this year. So it's gone from 1 hour a week to me full-time last year to now, I think, looking at the Western Port Learning Guarantee as a real cluster model and I guess approach to education in the region, with a vision of having no students enter the high school without being able to read or write executively, and reducing that number quite significantly to near zero of the students who are behind level when they come in. So the No Limits program in the early years, starting at kindergarten, where the students are screened for their phonological awareness skills, moving into some of the intervention supports they have in place in the junior area, which I know is supported by MPF as well, into the Learning Enhancement program. Last year, I was just working with the Year 6 students. This year, it's myself as well as 2 integration aides or educational support staffs in the primary school who take groups, and we work across 5 classes from years 3 to 6. The wellbeing supports that have been put in place, we realised last year, as I mentioned, that real link between education and wellbeing, and it was an enormous task to do both. So having Trudy on board has just been a huge it's just really allowed me to focus on student academics and developing IEPs with teachers to solely focus on that. as well as the support from Western Port Community Support and a number of other agencies like Living Free Project. And then moving into the Elevate program, which operates at the secondary level, and you'll hear more about that next week, as well as a music program which operates across the 3 schools as well. So a big thank you for your support with some of the consistencies that's allowed us to put in place across the school. We know that these kids come from severe trauma backgrounds, or many of them do. Having the Berry Street education model across the schools gives us a common language and approach to I guess, supporting these students in their day-to-day, as well as the Sounds Right literacy program, which has been absolutely huge for my practice, but I think more importantly, supporting students who otherwise wouldn't get a go at primary school and learning to read, write.
Ross, could you perhaps just on 2 points there? Some people might not be fully aware of what the Berry Street model is or what Sounds Right is, but they're both really critical elements of what you're doing. And I think they're critical across the whole spectrum of the work, certainly up in the secondary school as well. Would you give us some insights into what those 2 approaches are?
Absolutely. So the Berry Street education model is a trauma-informed practice model, and it's based on a school at Berry Street, and really just making sure that students are supported in their day-to-day, I guess, transitions in the classroom, so entering the classroom, making sure that they're given adequate breaks in the classroom, that they're centred and ready to learn, and giving teachers strategies to support students with possibly additional needs or through that trauma lens. The Sounds Right program, which, and please ask any questions, the Sounds Right program for me, I thought I'd been a teacher for 7 years in the primary school, and I'm happy to be vulnerable and say I thought I knew a lot about phonics and early years education, being a prep teacher, and I taught grade 1, 2 for 5 years. So I thought I was quite across it. And Chris Quinn said to me at the beginning of my tenure last year, he said, "I've got this training for you to go along to." And I thought, okay, I'm reasonably across this, but I'll go along. And I went there and I realised how much I didn't know, and learnt so much about supporting students with learning difficulties. But not only that, through further research and as this has evolved, we're starting to learn and have seen some schools that do this really well, that this structured literacy model, which I'll use sort of interchangeably with Sounds Right, which is really explicit teaching of sounds, explicit systematic teaching of sounds from an early age, that it benefits all students. It's not just for students with learning difficulties, that it really, I think, is a more inclusive model of education. And you're starting to see some governments like the New South Wales government move to this model of teaching. And the thinking behind it is that we're not born learning to read. It's not an innate ability like we learn to talk, or it's something that we need to be taught to do. You don't just hop into a car and someone throws you the car keys and says, off you go. You need to be shown how to do it. So Sounds Right is really taking students through step by step and gradually introducing sounds, or the alphabet representation of those sounds, to help them form those neural pathways in their brain. Where this differs is I think that Victorian primary schools, from my perspective, are quite reliant on a balanced literacy approach, which is where we teach students to read by showing sight word flashcards and through just immersing them in rich literature, which is certainly important, and not disregarding that for any moment. But this way of teaching skilled me up to go, okay, this student isn't learning, what can I do to support them? And the fact that we've now got all the primary school staff trained in this, as well as a building number of secondary school staff, I think will really change this whole cluster approach, and I think really change education for students in the Western Port area, that we're not going to have students who come to high school and aren't able to read. Some of the growth that we had last year was phenomenal with the students that we've worked with. The intervention at the secondary level has also shifted to this Sounds Right approach, and the intervention team here can't speak highly enough about how they've been able to teach students skills, not just flashcards and showing them words that they are going to forget. They're teaching the skills of reading, writing and spelling that are lifelong. One student, and I'm going to a story about him, they did a spelling test the beginning of last year, and he was writing at a 6-year-old's age in grade 6. He made 4.4 years of growth on that one spelling test last year. This student has severe trauma background, drug and alcohol abuse, involvement in youth justice police at the moment. The messaging from the wellbeing team is, if he didn't have that connection with myself, I was very lucky to be in that position, but with school as well, that he would be severely disengaged. And the message is that he can access curriculum. We're working on some other things with him, and he still engages with the Sounds Right program. So that's been a huge win, just as an example as how we're supporting students in their transition from primary to secondary.
Sounds like a seismic shift, Ross.
Yeah, it is, and for so many students that are given the chance to read, that I don't think wouldn't have accessed the learning should we not have had this program. So thank you.
I think some people might find it a bit unbelievable that it's really at that level, that our schools have operating like this. I mean, but the fact that you're shifting it is fantastic. Thanks, Ross.
I'll just add, Steph, I was looking at the image on my screen. This is only one piece of the puzzle, but a really important piece for these kids who are missing that ability to decode. It's still super important that we teach vocabulary, that we teach language structures through really rich novels and literature. And I think skilling up parents will be sort of one of the next steps for us in making sure that books are read in the home and things like that. But that's sort of what we're moving towards, is this sort of junior and primary approach in the primary, up to how it becomes increasingly complex and strategic in the secondary level.
Yeah.
And that's why, Steph, it was the No Limits program just fitted beautifully and aligned beautifully to the Sounds Right program, because children, it's innate to be able to speak in languages, but reading's not. And so that's where we started from, their ability to speak. And that's why it was so important. That No Limits program, it sort of has amalgamated into the Learning Enhancement program, because it's been that too has shown us that all students have the ability and capacity to read if they're given a program that, like you, Ross, said, has no ceiling, it has the floor, and then it's available to everybody.
Fantastic. And would you like to comment on the question from Leonie? Interested to know how teaching staff have responded to the various initiatives and what they do differently now as a result of that.
Sure.
Thanks, Leonie.
Yeah, great question, Leonie. I think at the very beginning, when we were sort of first bringing the Sounds Right program in, I think there might have been, like Ross and I were saying, a bit of scepticism, because we're saying, oh, we've been there, we've done that, but a whole school approach is key. And so being able to have all our staff from F to 6 and beyond into the Western Port Secondary College, all staff that have received the professional development, including the principals. So myself and Tina and Chris, we underwent the training as well. We had to film ourselves and be critiqued by others whilst we implemented this program. I submitted mine I was upside down teaching the lesson because IT is not my skill. So they critiqued me on that, but that was fine. And I think one of the key things, Leonie, was that because the principals were immersed in it, we were able to have conversations with our staff, what worked, what didn't work, what our challenges were, what our barriers were. And we were able to significantly see, when we took it back into the classrooms, there was a script. No one was fearful of failing, because it was something new. It wasn't that we were throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We still believe in rich vocabulary introduced to all of our students, but it was a solid program that went from F all the way to Western Port Secondary College, because the principal at a secondary college training, and so the staff really embraced it, Leonie. With the social emotional program that's known as the Berry Street program, I think that has also, we haven't finished it, that was a bit of a stepping stone for us. Tina and Chris and I, we are aligned in our thinking that we have to have safe and supportive schools. We're all inclusive schools. We don't say no. We don't knock back students with diverse needs. In fact, we embrace them. We have a wraparound program to ensure that every child is taken under our wing. And I'm just lucky that I've got Trudy, I have Laura, I have Ross, and I have all of you sitting on the screen in front of me that has enabled that to actually happen. And on that story, when I was just going back, we were at the Harlem Children's Zone, and that child said, you know, teachers get me. And I'm talking about one child that Ross would know quite well. Significant background, trauma background, father was incarcerated, just a background that you could probably read in a novel. And I remember we had worked really hard with this child, and he was transitioning to Western Port. And I said, oh, so what's made, and he had made leaps and bounds. And I said, what's been the biggest difference? Like, what's made you what you are now? And he said, I was a little bit teary, it makes me a little bit teary. He goes, teachers like me. And I went, oh, that's nice. And then he used the word believe in me. And I just thought that was just brilliant. And so I called his mother, and we had another meeting. The child would have been doing something wrong, I'm sure, but you know, you put your face on and you love them. And we have this wraparound program, and the mother came in, and I told her the story that it's hard not to use their name, that X had said to me, they like me and they believe in me. And the mother started crying, and I just went, oh no, it's a good thing. That's a good thing. And she said, and I'll never forget it, she goes, you've made us feel like we matter. And I thought that was a big shift. And I thought that was been the biggest thing for me, because not only did we wrap around our arms around child X, I realised that we'd had a significant impact on the mum. And that's what the Learning Enhancement Project was all about, that we learned from the Harlem's Children's Zone, and specifically from that one child when I was in line getting a drink. So it's amazing.
Emma, I think isn't that really what this whole thing is about? It's about that everyone actually matters. And
everyone matters.
Everyone matters.
Yeah. I didn't realise that the mums and the dads and the carers sometimes might feel either judged or a little bit backwards, but we've got Laura and we have Georgia and we have Trudy and we have people that we don't need any more food banks. I don't need any more clothes. I don't need any more. We need someone who is the conduit between all of those services. And so your gift the Morning Peninsula Foundation has given me the gift of time, and they've also given me the gift in Trudy that has allowed us to have more eyes on more of our families. And when my students go to Western Port Secondary, Trudy's there for them, Ross is there for them. They're doing a similar social and emotional wellbeing program, and they're also doing the Sounds Right program. It's nothing's too frightening for the parent nor for the child. And I really believe the relationships and the connections piece that I'm always banging on about, and my staff must just roll their eyes or stick a pen in their own eyeball at times. That's the most important piece. If a child feels connected to a significant adult or another person, you know they're going to have a chance. They will talk to you. They might not be able to get, they might get 2 out of 10 for their spelling, but they know they've got 2 right.
And perhaps Emma, that brings us to Jeremy's question. Jeremy, would you like to ask the question, because I think we're talking about sort of what are we measuring here, and it's pretty interesting, you know, those last comments, Emma.
I think, Jeremy, I don't know where you are on the screen, so I'm just going to be rolling my eyes. Oh, hi, Jeremy.
And he's just going to ask the question, Em.
Oh,
hold on a sec. Yeah.
Maybe the question didn't fully capture what I was getting at. I think really I have no doubt that what you're all doing is having a positive impact. I'm not sure that there's any doubt about that. But the question to me is, how do you scale that, and what resources are needed to scale that? And to be able to get those resources, we need to be able to demonstrate objectively success. So what do you look at, and do your team look at as the key measures of success of something like this? And how long will it be how long do we have to look at this for to be able to be confident that it's sticking?
Yeah, great question, Jeremy. I think we've got many factors. We've got parent surveys, we've got student surveys, and teacher surveys, etc. But my biggest piece is attendance. If attendance is going up and children are actually coming to school. It's if children are running through that gate quicker than they're running out of it. It's been able to come in and have a conversation with the children, and they are able to have a conversation with an adult about their own learning. We've got data sets like you wouldn't believe. We've got NAPLAN data sets, we've got teacher judgment data sets, we've got formative assessment, we have summative assessment, and that can measure their learning piece. But I think the really important piece of work, and this was why I think this program, the Learning Enhancement program, will be forever evolving. I think the piece is around sustainability, to make these programs sustainable. So if philanthropic money isn't forthcoming, what's going to happen? Is it all going to fall apart and we go back? But that's not the case. We've got dedicated teaching staff. We have staff that have a common language. We have a program that involves now from kinder all the way through to the Elevate program that we have eyes on. We've almost got that predictive analytics that if we know if a child is coming from a trauma-based background, a single family, out of home care, we know their chances, and in a postcode, we know their chances are probably are going to be less than another person's. But if all of these things that we have in place are made sustainable, well, that is our main objective. And then we can keep evolving from there. And I know Ross will be talking about some other, like with the science of reading piece. How are we going to embed that into subject areas at Western Port? So how does the science teacher, how does the maths teacher, how do they build on what we are doing and moving forward? And I think that's our next piece of work as well. And I think bringing in, I think the programs will be scaled up. We're hoping that these interventions will no longer, we're hoping Ross will be out of a job, for heaven's sakes. So, well, with all due respect, Ross, so in year 7 and 8 and 9, they're not having a tier 2 and tier 3 intervention, that the students coming in from kinder are more knowledgeable, have had greater exposure, that we've got the no limits data that we can build on when they're 5 and 6 and not when they're 12 and 13. So I think our key is around building teacher capacity, ensuring that if one teacher leaves, another one that comes in is also undertaking the PEDA, undertaking their professional development and knows what's going on. And I think we continually challenge each other. What's not working, and if it's not working, why isn't it working? And I think that's okay. Having really difficult conversations, and enlightening ones. Like, we might not always agree on certain things, but having an action plan moving forward for our students is imperative. And as long as the parents have a voice in that, and they understand, the parents will always want more for their child. So I think that's pretty important as well, making sure that parents are always brought along. And that's why I think the likes of our Laura and our Georgia and our Trudy are so important. So it really is a big wraparound program. I hope that answers your question. I'm probably blabbering on now.
Thanks, Emma. And Belinda and Jenny, I think, had a question as well. Perhaps we could go to Jenny and then Belinda. Is that all right?
Thanks, Steph. And hi, everyone. One of the obvious values of philanthropy is it can fund things that are hard to get funding for other times. Use the funding in a very sort of social change way to demonstrate new ways of doing things, and which is what's obviously happening in your project, and well done, congratulations. We're always interested in how these learnings can be extrapolated out further to other places, other programs, and into the mainstream, because, while philanthropy can fund things, it's about that much of total funding pool. So where is the state government in this? Where are the learnings going from your program so that these can be scaled up into and to be able to be used, these methods, in other places that have similar need?
Do you want to speak to that, Ross or Emma? Or, I mean, I think we have people from state government here today, which is very nice.
I could try to speak to what I know or some of the findings, and maybe a bit of response to Jeremy's question as well. I think there's another one in the chat about how staff have responded to this. I think it's a big change for teaching staff to say, you used to teach this way, we're showing you this way, which is more efficient. So that's been a big shift, and I think principals and schools have been relatively sensitive in not giving too much too soon. One thing we found last year was that in terms of evaluating it, we used the Sounds Right diagnostic screener, which assesses core skills required for reading and spelling. So we said, great, we've got this tool to measure how the kids are tracking with 3 skills in particular: blending, segmenting, and the ability to change sounds in words. So that was a great starting point, but a learning as well that this wasn't normed referenced. It wasn't, based on Australian standards. So this year we've put a few more things in place that are normed referenced, like the South Australian spelling test, which we'll use next year as well, and start to slowly introduce these assessments into the school, which I think will capture the work that's occurring not only in the Learning Enhancement program or the No Limits program, but occurring across the classrooms. But I think that is a bit of a sensitive shift for teachers, saying, change your practice. I think teachers are starting to say now, what we're teaching isn't reflected in the assessments that we're currently giving. We need to change things up. So I think that that will change, especially I think next year. In response to, again, how do we then capture that to make sure that this can be implemented somewhere else? I think it's really hard to measure sometimes. How do you measure your ability to refer a student to a psychiatrist? Or how do you measure a Koori student's connectedness to the local gathering place, like the connections we've built with Will and Moraine? So we've been working a little bit with Whitehive and some other data people in terms of how we capture that. I think there are some schools as well, like Bentley West Primary School, that are doing this extremely well and are further down the journey, not in the cluster approach, but in the balanced literacy approach. So I think the governments are starting to listen. They rewrote some of the curriculum documents early this year, and there was a lot of input from this science of reading or structured literacy community about this needs to be in the curriculum and there needs to be no grey area on this. Like I mentioned, New South Wales government spent, I can't remember the investment, but a lot of money on getting decodable texts into primary schools, which are vital for the program to be implemented. They're like books that are like training wheels that you teach kids the skills and sounds that you've been working on, and you take them off and then they can enjoy reading with real text. So in response to
perhaps just on the issue of the government here, at this point, Jenny, the MPF's really excited to be in a partnership with the state government through the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions, and they have a working in place initiative which they are keen to explore with us. So they're basically saying to MPF, what are you doing with community partners in the region? What are you measuring? And they've got 4 areas of particular interest. That is data. How do we use data? Funding. How does funding either help or not help in service delivery and so on? The culture or the way of operating, and what's the 4th one? Now I've forgotten. But we've got these learning questions which we're approaching through this work in tandem with the government. So there seems to be a huge willingness on the part of the government to be part of this. And we can only celebrate that, I think, and work with them as much as possible. I hope that helps a little.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, it's obviously what is a desired outcome of all the things we're all involved in, that these learnings can go on and be utilised elsewhere. Not everybody is reinventing wheels all the time. But then the people that can fund things, which is the government, can actually take that and say, yes, here's the good evidence base. We can extrapolate from that and roll these programs out, in their own particular ways in other areas. So thank you.
Yeah. And Belinda, did you want to have a question?
I think I'm the only Belinda on the call, and no, I don't.
Oh, sorry, I thought you did.
No, sorry.
Sorry about that. Sorry
just
about
on
that.
just to further to Jenny's question, I think it's a really important one to also acknowledge that we're now hopefully bringing in a couple more primary schools in as well, like Woolaroo and Hastings Primary School. And we've also had Rosebud, some interest in from Eastbourne, Rosebud Secondary, and we're having conversations with them now. I think we're meeting on Thursday as well, Steph, to sort of let them know what we're doing, what the challenges have been, what the successes have been, and moving forward, what do we really want this program to, this learning enhancement program to be? And I think that comes down to building the teacher capacity again. And Ross is we're hoping to be able to send him possibly and become a trainer in the Sounds Right that we have direct access to. Only, no other schools are allowed. Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, through this work with that we are doing with YHive Data Analytics, we will be producing a documentation about how the whole thing works, how it's implemented, like an artifact, I guess, for that other people can use. And we will definitely have a whole system of data measurements in there as much as we can. It's exciting to work with a new startup data company that's full of 20-something-year-olds that'll speak a completely different language and codify everything. So when you say, how do you measure the engagement with Will and Moraine or something, they'll work it out, so that we can use the latest technologies really in a really exciting way in this social space. And I think partnering in this way with new people is really, really exciting. So we're, as a foundation, incredibly grateful to be partnering with the state government to basically have funding to do what we want to do, which is, the essence of great funding, to give people the money for what they need, they say they need to do with it. Like with clients that Georgia and Laura work with, what do you actually need? Let you lead us on the journey. So we will come out with some really tangible, useful documents that we can share with more people from this work. And but huge thanks to everyone who makes it possible, which is everyone here. And I think we're pretty well close to time. If there's any more questions, happy to take them now or later, but can't thank you enough for your time and generosity. And Em and Trudy, sorry Trudy, we didn't hear from you today. Ross, Georgia and Laura, thanks so much for sharing with us what you do and the passion that you have for it. We'll be meeting again next Tuesday for anyone who'd like to join us, and then we go to the secondary school and learn what a truly inclusive school is and where this is all leading to. So please join us then if you can. And thanks very much.
And thank you to everybody for believing in us and the project and the program, and because a lot of people just rolled their eyes and and didn't really give us much credit. So I can't thank you enough, because you've allowed us to sort of live a bit of a dream. So it's been lovely. So thank you.
Some very key people that have made it possible, and we're very grateful to them. Thank you.